Is Chris Jericho leaving AEW? Also, not only that, but we got to talk about whether or not The Miz is leaving WWE and Jonathan Coachman talking about R-Truth. It actually sounds like maybe R-Truth turned down staying with WWE. We got more details, and it's all coming up right here on The Ango Show. And if you guys want more videos like this, don't forget to click that subscribe button. Trust me, you never want to miss a video. A little bit under the weather, seasonal changes, allergies, that kind of thing. Hopefully, this isn't too bad. But with that being said, let's kick things off with R-Truth. Obviously, R-Truth not being re-signed by the WWE has been quite the conversation. Yesterday on WWE Raw, people chanting for "We Want Truth." Granted, it wasn't a large portion of the audience, but at certain points during WWE Raw, it was clearly audible. Now, Jonathan Coachman was talking about this on the Coach and Bro show. Jonathan Coachman, obviously former WWE talent, he explained that a source close to the situation actually told him that WWE did in fact make R-Truth an offer. However, it was significantly lower than what he was previously making. Now, he says this specifically. He says, I should put this out there because I had somebody reach out to me and reportedly, and I have not confirmed this, but reportedly they did offer R-Truth a contract that was far less money than what he was making, and he decided to turn that down. That's what somebody told me that's in the know. Now, whether or not that's true, I'm not sure. Now, of course, this is an interesting topic, largely due to the fact that R-Truth is somebody who is universally loved. Um, if WWE offered him a contract and it was less money, it kind of makes sense. It's not like R-Truth's role is a full-time, constantly on television act, right? And I know this sounds kind of crazy, but I have kind of pondered with the idea of what if WWE introduced like a vet's minimum. This is something that you see within, American sports, National Basketball Association. Like the NBA has a vet's minimum. People that are vets come in, maybe they don't get the most playing time, but they're still an asset to the team and they get, there's a little minimum amount of money that they're able to be spent on. I'm curious if maybe WWE should incorporate something like that. And then, of course, it's up to the talent to take it or not, right? R-Truth, could take that lesser contract, maybe not get utilized all the time, but it guarantees money coming in, that kind of thing. And then when he gets the call to get used, he gets used. Um, who knows if this is true, right? But if it is true, it obviously kind of sucks because we all like R-Truth. I think there's nobody who's going to really disagree with me that R-Truth is an awesome talent. So definitely one of those things that sucks. But it is interesting to see that the conversation went from being, hey, WWE didn't want him to, well, apparently they did. He just didn't want to stay. That brings us to our next topic, ladies and gentlemen. Is The Miz leaving WWE? Is he staying with the WWE? There's been a lot of confusion here. A lot of people sitting here making the speculation that he's leaving the company. For those who don't understand why, let me kind of break it down for you. R-Truth, it gets revealed that he's not re-signing with the company. He's not being re-signed. And well, The Miz is immediately taking WWE mentions off of social media. So, like on his Twitter account, it's no longer anything to do with WWE. He's unfollowed the WWE, and it's really just led to a point where a lot of people feel like he's actually gone from the WWE. Now, this is where it gets tricky because people have done this in the past and it doesn't necessarily mean anything. But with The Miz, a lot of people are kind of thinking that the writing is on the wall. If you guys didn't know, I did talk about it, I want to say about a month ago on this channel or several weeks ago. But he took a hosting role for American Gladiators for Amazon, right? So with The Miz kind of going to this direction of maybe the writing is on the wall, in the sense that he's going to be taking some more hosting gigs and now he's removing WWE. A lot of people think that maybe he is potentially gone from the company. That doesn't appear to be the case. In fact, it sounds like he still has more contract time, but of course, it is a interesting conversation for a multitude of reasons. Now, one thing I did want to mention with The Miz is The Miz doesn't need professional wrestling. Um, if he chose to leave WWE, he can go to AEW, he can go to TNA, he could go to New Japan, he could go to AAA, he could go here, there, whatever. It doesn't matter. My point that I'm making is The Miz is a valuable asset to professional wrestling, but he doesn't need professional wrestling. He has outgrown professional wrestling. And because of that, he has a lot of opportunities, whether it's to host shows, start a podcast, it doesn't really matter. But what is really going on in this situation? Fightful Select says there's been so much speculation here, um, but nobody's been told whatsoever that he's been informed of his contract not being renewed. So there hasn't been any sort of dialogue between WWE and The Miz suggesting that he's leaving the company. So maybe The Miz could be making that decision on his own when the time comes, but as of right now, it doesn't look like that's actually the case. So that is something to obviously keep in mind. It's also really important to mention that like The Miz doesn't really need the WWE either, and WWE doesn't need him, right? Like, yes, he's reliable. Yes, he's a great worker. Yes, he connects with the audience. But as time goes on, if he actually does decide to leave, or if WWE decide to not renew him, this guy will be completely fine. He's one of those guys that he works so hard to get into WWE, and now he's just going to outshine in whatever he does. So it totally makes sense if he doesn't end up staying. And that brings us to our final topic, ladies and gentlemen. What's happening with Chris Jericho? There's a lot of speculation that Chris Jericho could be leaving AEW. Dave Meltzer was talking about his AEW status, and he did in fact say that the Fozzy tour is over. Chris Jericho has been doing some stuff with TV shows that he filmed, but as far as coming back to AEW, there is currently nothing on the table as of right now. Now, technically, Chris Jericho has been available even during the tour with Fozzy because he doesn't do the shows on Wednesdays. He could have easily been at AEW, but they chose not to. So currently, as it stands, AEW doesn't have plans for Chris Jericho, and Chris Jericho doesn't have plans to come back to AEW just yet. This doesn't mean that he's leaving AEW. However, I do want to talk about this. Chris Jericho, all the respect to him, one of the GOATs. We could sit here and talk about what he's done, throughout his entire career, but he's had a really good career in AEW. I would go far as saying Chris Jericho is not needed in AEW anymore. I don't think Chris Jericho adds any more value to AEW. I think AEW has outgrown the need for Chris Jericho. And I'm going to throw this out there. Chris Jericho doesn't really need to be wrestling full time. I would actually like to see him come back to WWE so he can go into the Hall of Fame. Clearly, AEW doesn't have plans for him. Clearly, AEW in the last I would say in the last year or two, they haven't really needed Chris Jericho. And I think Chris Jericho is kind of different from the vision that AEW set forth, which, right now, a lot of the focus is on Will Ospreay and Hangman Page and Swerve and a whole different crop of talent. Chris Jericho is just always going to be one of those vets that he might have a big storyline here or there, but what value does he bring to AEW anymore? He was so instrumental and so important to the growth of AEW, and he helped them so much that at this point, I don't think they need him. And I think it's inevitable he'll go back to WWE for a Hall of Fame run. I don't care what anybody says, even if he doesn't want to admit the Hall of Fame is worth it. Like, I definitely see it happening, and I just think that is ultimately what's going to happen. So yeah, AEW doesn't have plans for him. You never know if that changes. Obviously, anything could change. Card is subject to change. But this idea that Chris Jericho is probably sticking around in AEW much longer, I don't think that's necessarily the case. Of course, all of this stuff that's being talked about is speculation, but something to pay attention to. As always, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below, and I'll see you next time.